There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Saturday night, and that means it's time for the Weekly Dig. For anyone new to this stream, this is a live show where we dig into anime, old and new. I'm Brent. This is my amazing co-host, Steve.
Hello, hello.
We normally have John with us. He is off gallivanting with the stars at GalaxyCon. Or something like that. I don't know. And so so he's out this week, but we are keeping on with our talk about Serial Experiments Lain. We are up to episode 5, and here's where if it wasn't trippy before, I think all the drugs kick in these episodes. And the show kind of hints at that because the first episode 5's title is Distortion, and boy, there is distortion going on here because it begins with a disembodied voice talking about how mankind has stopped evolving and is just pitiful and
yeah.
What did you think? Because this is, up until this point, the episodes have always begun with some kind of plot, some kind of story, something going on. I think this is the first time where we start with something much more abstract. Did that seem different to you at all, or was it just like, oh, another Lain thing?
Very much different. So when it came on and the exposition started, I was just kind of like sitting there going, oh God, I need an explanation now. Now I'm getting an explanation. Okay, great. And of course it goes like you said, it goes into just how mankind is encased in flesh, so therefore it's impure and corrupted and pitiful and pathetic. But there's a way out, folks, and you can go to the wire.
Yeah.
And then I'm just sitting there watching this, going, no, that seems like a bad decision. But okay, exactly how do we do this? So then, of course, then the episode goes on. But I was not expecting that. I was expecting some level of I was literally like going, okay, I'm ready for the shadows. I get the red blue shift thing going now, and I'm incorporating that into my watching and trying to keep everything on, like my 3-ring binder of 2,000 pages of notes, and I'm like, okay, here we go, yeah, okay, get it, got it, and then I was just not prepared for just like oh, I get to sit here and just watch. Okay.
And to be clear, the voice speaking is the voice that talked to Lain earlier,
Right.
when she was just kind of sitting on the train and she heard a voice talking to her, and especially connects in because she later asks, who is talking to me, and he says, I'm God.
At which point I just went like this. Fine. All right. Fine. Isn't that what we all hear when we're on the train?
Yeah, exactly. So Lain is out in Shibuya, alone and confused, maybe. And then we cut to a scene which you don't see often in anime, which is a teenage girl putting her clothes on.
Yeah.
And then leaving some guy's place, apparently. It's interesting because remember when I first watched this, I was like, what's going on? And it's not a love hotel. It seems to be just some guy's apartment.
I was gonna say it just seemed like his place, and he was so blasé about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just want to hang out. I'm like going, okay, you just had sex, so not exactly what would occur to me, to say afterwards or anything.
Yeah. Well, also again the anime and this writer particularly is good at leveling subtle things, and so I love the line, don't you want to get something to eat? I mean, I think you were hungry. It's like, wow, okay. It's been I guess they've been busy.
Well, now you burned off some calories. Don't you want something to eat?
And she leaves without saying a word. just
I
out.
think if I was the guy, I think I'd be a little bit worried about that.
Yeah, exactly. Just gone, just done. And then interestingly, we see Mika again out in Shibuya on the in the. And so to be clear, when we say Shibuya, there's this Shibuya is a neighborhood in Tokyo where there's this dog statue, and it's a very common meeting place. You can say, "Hey, meet me at the." I forget the name of the dog now, but you meet me at that statue, and folks normally use that as a meeting point. We don't know who she's meeting, if she's meeting another guy, what's going on, but she certainly seems it's like she's waiting, and she gets stood up. And then she walks out, and she sees a traffic accident, and then keeps walking on.
Yeah, so everyone else, you see the people are just like, because death, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you see a traffic accident, you want to go, oh God, are you okay? Mm-hmm. And Mika's just like,
yeah.
I mean, it's almost like as if she was like annoyed.
Yeah.
That your death is holding me up from whatever I'm about to do. Mm-hmm. And she's like, whatever, and just walks off. I was like,
yeah.
What happened in your life? Well, we know.
Yeah. We'll get to what's happening in her life later on in this tonight. And then we cut to Happy Lane in her bedroom, talking to a doll that's floating above the floor, and is talking to her about prophecy and
my Stretch Armstrong never did that.
Good. And we get this wonderfully creepy background music. It's sort of upbeat, kind of horror music-esque. I mentioned before, Kanaka, the writer, has said that he structured Lain like a horror series. It's not horror, but I think these are the episodes where very much those horror vibes just are all over the place. And so Lain is having this weird, trippy thing. It's also interesting what Lain is wearing. Lain is wearing this, long shift kind of a dress with, a big bow on front. And I don't know what that means. I'll be frank with you. Yes, exactly. A Funky Fogger. X-Files theme. Very X-Files theme-esque. And this is also, I think, where we get one of the first hints, because the Lain asks for a story, and the doll says, well, you already know everything, so I can't tell you a story that you don't know. And it's interesting how Lain reacts to a lot of what happens in this episode, because she's so open, where she seems to just kind of not quite accept that, but just kind of move on. She's not really questioning what's going on here. I think in light of later episodes, it's unclear a bit to me what's going on here. I think I know what's going on here, but it's a little hard to say. What do you think are these scenes? Because we see more scenes like this a little later on.
So when the floating creepy Lolita doll, and they're having this conversation, and she's informing Lain. We're actually being informed that Lain is connected, super connected, and I'm using that term deliberately. It is very super connected into what's going on around her, but she's not quite aware of it.
Yeah,
she's very childlike at this point.
Mm-hmm.
My first impression was that this was a conversation that actually happened some time ago.
Yeah, I had that impression too.
Yeah, and some time ago, and it was more of like a child being, oh, tell me what's going on, kind of thing. And but when you look at the thing that she's wearing, and it reminds me of when you're in a church and you see people in robes, that kind of thing. So is she actually? At first I thought it was like bed attire, but now I'm thinking that it's more along the lines of this is her paying homage to whatever it is that's she's hearing, and she's trying to cajole answers out of it. And so, but the thing of it is about prophecy is that it's the only thing that the doll can tell her, because you don't know what prophecy is, because prophecy is the future. And then they go into the exposition about, well, if you do prophecy, then it becomes this, and you get into the further conversations,
right?
Which switches it up with other dolls.
Yes,
and things. Exactly.
Let's jump to those, and we'll jump back to the rest of the stuff here in a bit, because we get this totem thing.
Creep the hell out of me.
Boy, that's it's one of the things I love about the show is that it keeps switching it up, because you have the doll and you're like, okay, this is weird, but I'm at least familiar with the symbolism here.
Yeah.
And then it's like Darth Vader is suddenly on your screen.
That's what I thought too. I was just like, I was gonna Anakin. Is that you? Anakin? Anakin's behind it all.
And then of course
this was the real prequel.
Yeah, exactly. Oh boy. But it's and this one's talking about history and connections and how history is also kind of this. What is a timeline, basically? Is it just random events? It's not. And then we go to her mother shows up. Dead-eyed mom. I also do, and again, it's one of those things where, love the show. Because she's looking down at Lain, and because she's floating up, and her toes are pointed down, she looks like she's been hung.
Yeah.
But like there are no rope arcs around her neck, and she's talking like it's all fine. But just the visuals catch you with that. Then she asks, "Are you my mother?" Point being, each of these scenes always ends with a question that Lain asks that never we don't hear the answer to. The first one is who asks the prophecy, or who poses the prophecy. The second one is who lays the events on the timeline, who connects the points in the timeline. The third one is I think that the ones with the parents, she doesn't actually have a question. It just sort of ends. But the answer to the first two questions is God. Right? And I think it's interesting that, we're kind of moving up the chain. And as you said, very childlike. We start with the dolly, a very classic childlike sort of symbol. And then we move up to sort of this abstract representation of a religious element. And then we move to the mother, who is obviously very godlike to a young child. But we know psychologically that, and we're like, we're waiting for the father to show up. Psychologically, people often associate their father with God. Like that is one of the classic sort of psychological associations. Right. So I think they're definitely building up to that sort of symbolism in this whole thing, that we're kind of talking about what is God and what does God mean, especially because Yasuo, the father here, specifically says, there's a thing out in the wired, maybe it's God, I don't know, but it would have that ability if the wired exactly. And it ties into some of the things that this episode is doing, where for all the freaky stuff, it's basically laying out the fundamental, I think, kind of reality architecture of the series. That you have the physical world, you have the wired as a sort of layer on top, and if the wired is this sort of superstructure, and especially if the two are now becoming connected in some way, then what does that mean? And what would powers in the wired give you over the physical reality? And so we're transitioning back and forth between that and all the stuff happening with poor Mika on the street, and other stuff going on there. One thing I did not realize, and so as we were doing some digging into this, somebody suggested that Mika is actually the girl with the gas mask on in Siberia. What do you think about that theory?
Sure, why not? It honestly, when I came across that as well, in my rabbit hole search that I came across, I saw the descriptions and saw that little input there, and I was just like, well, it actually could be.
Mm-hmm.
It would kind of make sense, because if they're actually keeping tabs on her
Mm-hmm.
in some way, shape, or form, that would make sense that Mika would be there
Mm-hmm.
and show up and but be in disguise, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually gonna scroll through to see if I can find that. Find Siberia.
Yeah, and it's I think it's plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, why not? I think it would be plausible. It would explain, like, where she is when she's not at home or at school, other than with some rando guy.
True.
And it might, also explain why she's so dead inside after watching, a car accident just having no effect on her whatsoever.
True. Well, we also know there she is.
But it would also be interesting because she's the one who was also dealing the Excel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Basuke processor.
Yeah.
I'll never get over that. Yeah, I could see it. I'm not convinced, I'll be honest, with the imagery.
Right,
I think it's borderline. But I like it. I like the idea. But and like you say, what I find more interesting about that is the idea that we know that Siberia is this sort of is this place where the wired and the physical world are kind of blurring, and where weird things are happening. And so if Mika is there a lot, then that would explain why she's having these visions, why things are going weird. Also, I just want to point out in this show that that car going crazy is reported on the news as a failure in the self-driving cars software. And so, late 90s, they're already predicting self-driving cars. It's pretty cool.
And also predicting the accidents with self-driving cars.
Mm-hmm. Yes. If any of you have watched Denno Coil, by the way, another anime series, you know that is a major plot point in that series as well, is the idea of widespread automation and what we do when that fails. So, and this is another thing that might sort of connect that up, is that Taro suddenly shows up, the little kid, and asks Mika out on a date. Little brat.
But you notice that's the only time that she actually sees any real emotion is when she spills the drink on her sleeve, and she seems most annoyed about that.
Yeah,
like that's of utmost concern for her.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I would also say, if Mika's been in Siberia, that would explain why Taro would sort of come up to her and say, "Hey, you," So maybe. But you're absolutely right. Is that suddenly like a physical violation, if you will, is the only thing that gets her attention. It's kind of funny. Then she opens the tissue. So another important thing. This is a thing that happens in Japan. I did not know this when I first watched the series. Is that if you're just out and about, folks will hand you tissues. One of the reasons is that until recently, I don't know how common this is, public bathrooms in Japan did not have toilet paper. They just did not have the facilities for that.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and so it was expected that you would, and they would have vending machines for toilet paper and little packages of tissues and so forth. And that was the idea, is that if you wanted to use a public toilet, you'd go in, you'd pay 20 yen and get your toilet paper. And so what happens is that if you're a religious group, or if you're canvassing for something, you'll hand out tissues with a little thing on the front saying we are XYZ, vote for us, whatever.
Right.
So as you're wandering around, you will see people sort of just handing out random tissues, and it's kind of a weird social thing. Which I don't really want to accept this, but you're just getting it for free, so whatever. So I was like, who takes tissues on the street? But yeah, it happens. It happened to. Well, I didn't get tissues. I got something else. But anyway. It's not 10 o'clock yet. I can't talk about that. But she gets the tissue with this message on it saying, fulfill the prophecy.
Right.
It is also worth noting, something that I noticed this time, I'm not sure if this is true, but the actual like words on the paper look to me very neat. Like the tissue is crumpled, but the words look almost like they're superimposed on the tissue. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if they were just kind of in a hurry or not. But given that as the episode goes on, we realize that Mika is not having the best of days, I wonder if this is actually on the tissue or not. This is where Mika sees Lain in the street, who's just kind of mumbling to herself. And then she looks up and sees Lain in the screen, giant screen on Shibuya, which is the thing that actually exists. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to reveal a thing that I'm going to have to now talk to John about separately, so we can talk about this when he gets back. I think there are two lanes. There's physical Lain in the real world, and there's a separate Lain in the Wired, who has her own agenda and is doing her own things. And I think when we see that snarky, aggressive Lain who's like screwing things up, that's when we're seeing the kind of Wired Lain that is different from the actual Lain we're talking about. And I don't mean like Lain when she gets on the computer. I mean a completely different entity. I think this is that other Lain that she sees. I think she's seeing a completely different Lain that is online that is screwing things up.
See, what I get out of that, because of the accidents and because of the cars, self-driving cars, and because of the failure in the lights as well, because they mentioned that, and it happens about the time that Lain shows up on the camera, and there's Lain mumbling in the street, and I forget what it is that she's mumbling, but it's to me what I thought what that was about was basically. Yes and no, that they're separate entities. In other words, I think that Lain lost herself and is not. Portion where the wired portion of herself is actually doing.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when she got disconnected, she's actually disconnected in the real world as opposed to being disconnected from the wired.
Gotcha.
So she's still in the wired, but her body is still functioning, and so there's that confusion, and as a result of that, she can't control what that other part of her is doing, and that other part of her, like you say, is screwing things up, like the traffic signals in the cars and all that.
That makes sense. It would also make sense if she is like parsing through old memories or working through things and so forth. That's kind of what we're seeing is just her kind of dissociating and working through all these things mentally. I like that a lot. But yeah, fun scene. And then, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, mental trauma. It's always good to have that when you're in the middle of the street.
Yeah,
across the street. Yeah,
totally.
Why not?
Especially Shibuya, the busiest intersection in Japan or the world or something. And then we get a scene in school where we learn two things. Actually, no, this isn't the one we learn the scene. The other thing. But where they're like, boy, Elaine, I didn't know how much of a hacker you were. And she's like, Yeah, what
are you saying?
And she gets home and finds out. Sure enough, stuff's going on. And so then the girls all go out to McDonald's and have their little meal there. This is actually kind of interesting because they spend a lot of time like focusing on the food, which I thought was kind of weird. And just here's the packages, here is their food, here are the chicken nuggets. Not quite sure why, but okay. Just seems very, very, very careful, including like the apple pie. One of the things I found weird is that like, and maybe this is just purely exposition, but Alice gets this spam mail and starts talking about how there's this organization called the Knights and maybe they're doing things. Alice seems really obsessed with the Knights. Like, for somebody who just got a spam mail, like she kind of goes on and on and on about this organization, and they're fighting back or doing something. That seemed kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, Alice seems to be more with Lane. Kind of, I think she is through Lane is, to me, it seems like because she's interested in Lane in various levels, she's probably exploring the Wired herself. I mean, they're going to Siberia. They're doing these things. She seems to know what's going on in a kind of a outsider sense of seeing on the outside while looking in, sort of thing. So I think she's actually trying to penetrate Lane's world, so to speak, online, and so maybe she's coming across this kind of stuff.
True.
And she's recognizing, oh, these are things that might be connected.
Yeah. And granted, Chisa was their friend, or at least their classmate.
Yeah.
So she was certainly connected to that, and worried about what the heck's going on. This definitely, though, just reinforces kind of Alice's role, I think, though, as sort of this, the driver of these relationships, and very much kind of the alpha of this group, if you will. Definitely one pushing things. And then Mika at dinner. Great, lively dinner. Yeah. Rice. I also find it interesting that every time we cut to Lain at the table, not just in this episode, I think she's stirring her soup.
Yeah, she's not really eating anything.
No. Well,
but,
she doesn't need to.
Mika, yeah, that's right. Mika, though, when she's trying to talk to Lain, she looks at both of the parents and just kind of notices that they're not paying attention, so she feels that it's safe to bring up.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw you at this place, and at the intersection. And of course, she doesn't bring up the fact that I saw you mumbling to yourself in the middle of the intersection, almost getting hit. Saw your face up there, and watched someone die over here. And I think you're connected with all this. Dear, can you pass the? Here you go. And then it just Lane goes, huh? And then Mika's just like, I don't know. It just gives up.
Well, and I think this very much gives the lie to the idea that the entire family's in on it, whatever it is. Because Mika's definitely not in on it. She just doesn't know what's going on. I also just noticed Lane's little bear mug, which is adorable. And I also think that there is probably an element to this also of kind of making fun of the stereotypical Japanese family dinner of we're proper, we're eating, and we're doing the thing, and we don't ask father about his day. So I don't know how much that is there too.
We can smell the malt liquor on his face. We're not going to ask.
At least he's there for dinner, better than nothing. And Lain appears completely has no idea what's going on. And then we get this fantastic transition, which I'd completely forgotten about, where Mika looks down in her glass of milk, and the kind of reflected light, and then the light expands and fills our consciousness, and now we're back in Shibuya with the bright lights. And Mika is there, and she is sitting in a symbol. She's sort of on her knees on the ground, and we zoom up on this symbol. We'll see the symbol again. This symbol is a symbol of the Knights of the Eastern Calculus, aka the Knights. But this is the symbol they use on their for their organization. So if we need any more indication that Knights are involved, definitely this is it, and she's kind of in the center of that, getting affected by it. And then we get this wonderful horror scene of her in the cafe, or the family restaurant, I guess, trying to open her drink and spilling the drink, and the drink spelling fulfill the prophecy. Great. And then it's the cafe's empty, and then she runs into the ladies' room, and it's empty, and goes into the stall and sees the. If we can see it here, nope. Can we find it? Can we find that? There it is. And she sees it written all over the door. Yeah.
You know what? If I went into the men's room stall and I turned around and I closed the door and I saw all that on there, I would be like going, nope.
Yep.
Nope. I can hold it. We're just going to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I'm in the crazy part of town.
Where is the clown?
Exactly.
Where is
Somewhere.
the clown?
Mm-hmm.
No, but this is the part where Mika finally you see emotion from her.
Yeah,
and,
true.
Unfortunately, it's fear, and she's scared, and this sense of I don't know about you, but I have this sense of pre-programming taking over.
Oh, interesting.
And like this has already been in her head, and this is an activation.
Okay.
And so this is part, and unfortunately, the activation may have gone wrong because of all this imagery and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so she is, so again, she's, dealing with this. And when she gets back to the apartment and we see which part of her takes over.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the other part, Lain sees it for a moment, and it's this horrible little light image of Mika, of actual Mika going away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Honestly, that was like going, oh my god,
yeah,
horrifying. Oh my god, because the Mika that takes over kind of knows, kind of doesn't know what she's looking at, and she's perfectly okay with what she's looking at. And she's just like, no, I'm here, you're there, you're not real, I am, I'm taking over, and you're gone because I have to do the prophecy.
Yeah.
Set a bomb.
So yeah, so we find out in episode 6 all about the kid system, so we know that some organization has hold of it. Personally, I think what's happening here is that that system is being used on Mika. And Mika has got this, the tinfoil hat mind control rays. It's their thing, and they're being aimed straight at Mika. And so she's having this sort of dissociative freak out. I don't know that any of that thing that happened in Shibuya actually happened.
I think what happened was, yes, I think part of it, the part where she's sitting down and there's the symbol, and that did not happen. I think what happened was that she was in Shibuya. She did see Lain. She did see the image up there. Taro did come up to her, and by the way, I'm freeforming a connection here just now. I wonder if Taro's a knight.
Spoilers.
Okay. So I'm going to stop there. So okay.
I mean, we can go to that if you want to, but
okay. Because I don't know that was
a
leap of information there for me. So that was the catalyst to start the
that's a good one.
The activation.
That's interesting. Yes.
And,
huh.
Yeah. Well, so it goes in, and then we get the actual what's going on inside her head.
It's also pointed out whether Taro is a knight or not, the knight still could have made him a trigger.
Right.
That's an interesting thing. I'm also curious. I just noticed he has a red, white, and blue shirt, which looks kind of like the flag of France. Don't know. Just saying. Just made that connection right now. Exactly. Yes. They're all cone heads. It all makes sense. But no, I think that essentially Mika's been in her room this entire time, and she is essentially assembling like the news story and all the things that have been happening to her in her head, along with this message that's being beamed into her brain about the prophecy or whatever the heck's going on. And she's kind of assembling this memory. It's one of the reasons it's kind of a dreamlike situation where she's walking along, you bump into this kid, cafes, people are there, they aren't there. And so I think she's just kind of trying to make sense of all this stuff. And then at the end, basically, there's this dissociation between, her memory finally makes it home, right where her physical body is, and one of the two, and they essentially, de-res, if you will, at that point. But because Lain now has this sort of super connection to everything, she can see the after image, if you will. That said, I'm saying that's my theory. I also think it's totally possible that Shibuya happened, all that stuff happened exactly as you said. I think those are two, completely accurate possible explanations.
I just kind of half expected John to chime in and go, "You're both wrong."
Exactly. Probably are. Yes. Well, and then the other thing, which kind of goes against my theory, is that Lain then goes into her room, switches everything on, and we get, that zoomed in image of her face, just like was on the screen at Shibuya. So maybe it is her. Maybe it's her. All right, let us talk about episode 6.
What do we have to?
Have you noticed? Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Have you noticed that the audio on the opening bit has gotten more and more distorted every time?
I have not.
Yeah. It gets a little bit more weird and distorted and just kind of like passed through a filter every episode a little bit more. And then let me see here. Yep. So Yasuo comes in, sees that Lain has her computer going on, the whole computer thing. Yeah. I should point out, by the way, for those of you who are watching the Blu-ray remastered version, thank the fates, because this was so the color balance on this was so off before. Basically, like, we could only see half of these images in the original transfer of this. You couldn't see all of that wonderful detail of all like the pipes in the background and all the other stuff going on. All of this just was not there in the original DVD print. So it's lovely being able to see all of this imagery and be able to like really see just the detail, the wires on the floor and all that kind of stuff. Just some great artistic work here on Lane's HAL 9000 setup here. And then you get a wonderful little bit of misdirection, I think, where Lain is talking in the Wired to somebody. And the
It was Charlie Brown's teacher.
Yeah, exactly. And she's talking about how nice they are and how much she enjoys being with them. And then at the end, she reveals she's talking to the Knights. Again, I don't think this is physical Lain. I think this is the other Lain that exists in the Wired that has the relationship with the Knights that Lain does not have. That's my theory, but we'll go on from there. Because this is where things get religious. Much of the episode is about Lain noticing this religious symbolism, and this is where we find out that Lane's kind of not been spending as much time with Alice, Julian Reka, excuse me, and has been spending more time online. Also worth noting that they all recognize that. Like when she says she's not really spending time with them, they're like, "Oh, you're just hanging out online." Like, we get it. That's a thing. And then they do hang out. They do go around. And here's where we first see the image. Lain doesn't know what's going on, but we sure do momentarily later on, because we get to see Lain in the clouds blessing humanity.
So at the very beginning, as she's talking to the Knights, I agree that is Wired Lain. That is supposed to be her in cyberspace. Like, one of the things about Ghost in the Shell is that you definitely know when the Major is in the internet or in the consciousness.
I just rewatched Talk from Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. That episode where they're all in the chat room.
Yeah, chat room.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a little disc that come up. Yeah. I love those things. So you definitely, but that's the point. Is that you definitely know where you are in that.
Yep.
With Lain, you kind of have to sit there and figure out, because at first you see her kind of laid back.
Yeah.
In the chair, and she's not really moving, and you hear her talk, and then you kind of realize that maybe her physical body is unplugged, and she's into the wire. And then it goes into the the scenery we have of her in there, and she's laughing, and you hear the wah wah wah, and she's talking about friends, and she acknowledges that I don't really have friends. I don't really have these things. And then the voice comes up, and you don't know what they say, and she goes, "Oh, that's very nice of you. That's clearly the voice is complimenting her or something like that." But she goes back to the point that she goes, "I really don't have that many friends." So then what happens is that you see, because up to this point the wired Lain is snarky and she screws things up. She goes, "I'm gonna mess your boy up just because I can."
Yep.
But here now, Lain interacts with her friends, or her actual real life
Yeah.
we hope.
well,
right? We don't know really, but with the three of them, and she's interacting with them, and they're just like, come out with us, and she decides to do it. Maybe there's a point where she's just like, well, I don't have friends. The knights are telling me these nice things, and maybe they're telling me that to go out. They're telling me to go out and talk and whatever. And so she suddenly decides to join up with them. She dresses differently.
Yep, she does.
Makeup on. She has lipstick on. And so, and as she's leaving, the house, she sees the boy doing the thing, but she's not looking up. She's just paying attention to her friends, and she's doing all this stuff. And then you get the really cool, horrific, oh my God moment of, Lain in the clouds. But it's done in the way of classical angel paintings of the Renaissance, where you have the angel is blithely looking down and surrounded by clouds and rays of sun, and it's just this benevolent, kind thing looking down on you. And so all these kids are like welcoming this, and people are starting to look up and see it. And to me, that was the knights, or who they said they were the knights, said, oh, you want friends? We'll give you friends.
Yes.
We'll give you friends. We'll make you friends.
Exactly.
And so maybe that she thought that was like, oh, you know what? This is the sign I should hang out with the three people I've been hanging out with all the time. No, they're making her friends, and they're going, we're going to make you an angel kind of goddess kind of thing for kids, and who you are, and there's that whole that creep.
And given what we know of the kid system, we know that children are most susceptible to it. They're the first ones that'll notice it. So that's why they first see that. Plus the fact that we already we knew episodes before that they're playing Phantoma and getting involved in all this stuff. So they know. It's also worth noting that obviously Lain is glowy anime nudity, but not to get sort of weird and creepy, but Lain's not as flat-chested as this. It's clearly a very idealized androgynous Lain, right? It's not like the embodiment of Lain there. It's what you'd see in a Renaissance painting of just kind of this idealized individual.
Androgynous angel showing up.
Totally. But, again, keeps throwing curveballs at you and hit you upside the head with them. Because you see this and you're like, oh, crud. The kids are seeing that, Lain's seeing it. No, everybody sees it. Like, everyone in the street is like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So, this is like a real physical thing that's happening in the real world at this point. It's absolutely a thing. And then note Lain's reaction.
Oh, she's pissed.
Yeah, she doesn't necessarily recognize what's going on, but she's like, oh, this is a thing. Like, no, this is not cool.
No, this is not what I wanted. Yeah.
The great little flashback to Mika, sitting on the completely dead inside, sitting on the couch while the mother is going. I have to laugh because the whoever played the mother, I want to know like how they directed her, what she went into with, because how perfectly the English voice actor said that. And boy, you're back, and now Lane's off, God knows where, in this night, and oh gosh, and I just don't know anymore, and just shoot me, might as well shoot me. Like she has this perfect, just dead inside, tone to her. But yeah, and then Lane comes back, and we get, and like you were saying, and this is very much okay. Now we're in the Wired, very clearly, this sort of abstract representation of it. And they try to kind of explain the fact that in this version of reality, the more advanced you are, the more of your physical body, the more you can sort of manifest visually in the Wired. And most people can only, manifest ears or a mouth, whatever. But Lane can do more or less real. And then we find out about Professor Hodgson. And we jump into this. And full disclosure, like this just gets very info dumpy. The last episode is basically just, okay, and now this thing happened, which hopefully explains a lot of what goes on. It should be pointed out, so for those who haven't seen it, Professor Hodgman did this experiment where, and this is true, experiments have been done into sort of paranormal phenomenon. And it's been found that whatever you call paranormal phenomenon, sensitivity, or children are often slightly better than average at, for example, predicting what the next card is going to be, like 51% instead of 50% kind of stuff. And it's just enough, sort of, in terms of numerical stuff. You could dismiss it in terms of just variance in the data. Fine. I am not here to say that paranormal activity exists, whatever. But exactly. Now I do. But if you were to believe in it, the evidence for children is stronger than for adults, and that's where they're kind of going with it. And so the idea is he wired up a whole bunch of kids in one giant system, to sort of harness, take a weak signal and boost it with many, 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 many signals. And boy, that didn't go well. And I'm not going to show you the imagery from that thing. No. Because boy, it's that's disturbing. And basically, we got an infinite feedback loop, more or less. It just overloaded the system. And what's interesting is there's a line where he says, and I'm not going to get it exactly right. Those children's souls are beyond us now. Not that they died, but presumably that they essentially ascended into the Wired. They just pushed out. They're no longer in those bodies now. They're just gone. Now that could mean they've kind of dissipated into that sort of digital experience, or they're actually there. But yeah, it's just they're there. So I'm not sure if the show is implying that those children actually exist in the Wired or not. And maybe they're playing that game. Maybe that's where all that is coming from. Or if it's just, they're gone one way or the other.
The sense I got was that they are gone. That they are not part of the, well, I think in the sense of gone, meaning that they are assimilated into the Wire. They're not themselves. They just, it's sort of kind of like that whole idea that you incorporate into nothingness. So their whoever their souls would go into the Wired, and instead of being cohesive like Lain or Chisa or whomever else, or the new generation, as he points out, these maybe were just kids of a weaker generation. So they when they went, what I got from it was that they were actually trying to send the kids into the Wired.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And to boost the signal for them to get in there to harness what they could get out of the Wired, and that was the whole point.
Yeah.
And so then when the kids went there, they couldn't come back. They didn't have the strength. They didn't have the whatevers.
Yeah.
And there was no way for them to understand how to stay them.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of, went into incorporeal nothingness and became part of the net, maybe the structure of the net, whatever, but they were no longer conscious.
It could also be, and it should be pointed out, we are getting one person's story.
Right.
So who knows what actually happened there.
And even he's saying he's not sure he's getting it right.
Yeah, true. Mm-hmm. And it was 15 years ago. And he's dying, so that doesn't help either. And in fact, like, yeah. Anyway, he, and not only does he die, we get a cross.
Yeah.
Like they cut from him saying finally it's time to that world disappearing to Lane in the middle of a cross, and this is a very standard image in Japan for a gravestone, right? Instead of a gravestone, it would be like a cross for like Christians. So yeah, I don't think they're being subtle here. But we're not done yet, because Lane comes back into the physical world and sees the little red dots again.
The Zapus.
Yep, they're back. The Men in Black, and we jump to, and now I gotta say it's right there on screen. We jump to a pressure gauge which has a domain name on it.
And Steve, unhappily, late at night, when he knew he had to get up at 5 a.m. the next morning, looked at that link.
Mm-hmm. And what is at that link, Steve?
It is just a static image of Lane going, loser. And a bunch of stuff in Russian, a couple symbols. I think there's an equation in there. Mm-hmm. And you just go down the rabbit hole. What does this mean? Poor Laika. Laika? Who's Laika? Oh, it's the dead dog that's circling the earth. Okay, yeah. All right, and you go through all this stuff, and then you because of course you don't see something like that and just have it arbitrary. It's for a reason. You're supposed to look at it. You're supposed to look at it. And I find it interesting as a UK domain.
Yeah.
But so you go there, and it's as if you're looking at a CRT screen, a Kathy Ray, Ray tube screen. So it's all green, kind of digitalized, and things are at a different angle. So, like, I was literally taking my laptop and just kind of. Well, this doesn't help since I don't know any Cyrillic alphabet or Russian or anything, so I might as well just be upside down.
Yeah.
And then, which took me to the that fan site, which I just went, oh, boy. I didn't realize it was a fan site at first, but went down the rabbit hole. Well, just all sorts of fun. I left a whole bunch of messages for John. Hey, I found this. Hey, look at this. Oh my God, don't look at this. No, don't.
I'm going to drop this in chat if anyone's curious. So this is the link to the. This is the domain name that is on the pressure gauge, mebius.co.uk, and I think that's the static image. And then you can go to, and I want to make sure I get this right. The NeoCities domain, and if you go to
and turn your volume down.
Yes, turn your volume down.
Turn your volume down. Trust me, it's amusing and it's fun, and you'll dance in your chair, but just turn the volume down.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to go down the rabbit hole, you can go down the rabbit hole there. I remember when Lain came out over here in the States, and being a geek, sure enough, when that came up, out of curiosity, I Googled it, and that static site came up. That static page has been there since 1999. And I'm sure it's either it's probably Chiaki J. Kanaka. I'm betting the writer of this. If he put that on there, and he was technologically involved enough, he probably threw that on there for fun, and then he's just paying the domain name fees. But
the ultimate red herring FU.
Yes, exactly.
You're not gonna get anywhere with it.
No, we're not that obvious. This is Lain. And I do appreciate you do hear steam escaping and some weird sounds. But then Lain runs out and talks to them and says, what's going, who are you, whatever. And then her bedroom explodes. And the Knights reveal, the Men in Black reveal that somebody put a virus in your cooling system and caused it to overload. I suspect that the Men in Black, specifically annoyed her to get her out of the room to save her life, or to save her from at least getting hurt, deliberately to help her, because they know what's going on. And then we get that lovely reveal where she asks who did it, and as they get in the car, they say, "The Knights."
Nice. Well, if you want to be specific, I say it's Miko.
Could be. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll take that one. And Lain is left staring out at that shocker of a revelation.
Dun, dun, dun. But you know what? Here's the thing, though. This is the only times thus far that we actually get a direct answer to it.
It's true. You're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I was actually going, okay, messed up, but thank God.
I will also say, without getting to spoilers, next episode is where we actually get Lain sits down with somebody who's like, okay, from my perspective, here are some answers. And this is where the show kind of turns to say, okay, we've thrown all this weird stuff at you. We're going to start assembling a few pieces here and there. Now, obviously, they're from, this person's perspective, this person's perspective. But we start turning the boat from this point on, which is welcome. What the heck?
Or Kirby, towards the waterfall.
Exactly. What the heck do you think the show is at this point? You get to the end of this episode. What's your headspace at this point, Steve?
I think at this point, now that when one of the reasons why I was really happy with the direct question and the direct answer was for me, not so much as a validation of the thought that I'm having through this whole thing, but rather that it's sort of, to me, it's feeling like, okay, here we have this person that is clearly being watched.
Yes.
By multiple entities.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not just the Professor Father and the dead inside mom and or girl who's no longer her anymore. You have her friends, you have the Knights, you have the Men in Black, you have whatever's going on. She is, as the title suggests, serial experiments Lain. There are multiple experiments, so she might be a product of the kids' experiment. She might be a product of this. We don't know, but it seems like that there is something that people are wanting to see of her. And if I am thinking that this is about people understanding that people can ascend, and that's an important word, ascension, which is really important, because we're talking about not just being able to digitize and go into the wire. We're talking about ascending into the wire. We're talking about that religious imagery, especially if they're making her an angel. Yeah. So I think you have all these multiple entities that are recognizing that, and they're saying, how do we tap into that? How do we, and what would we use that for? And this is the first time that we've actually been able to grab someone before they actually make the jump. I don't know.
The shonen jump? I don't know.
Yeah, to actually ascend before they could catch up and see that. And it reminded me of I'm blanking on the old 1980s movie where they have a machine where it can actually record your thoughts and actually make it into a video. And I'm blanking on the name of it. And the end of it is a woman who has a heart attack and she's dying and she knows she's not going to live, and she puts the thing on, and so they're all trying to figure out the answers to the question, what's going to happen. Yep. And I'm totally blanking on the name. I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about the inner space and all the dream stuff, and
But so they're just all wanting to know, and can they control it?
Yeah, because clearly from this episode, we have this connection now that Professor Hodgson made this sort of accidental connection between the real world and the Wired 15 years ago. And then somebody dug it out of a dumpster and has hooked it back up again in some way, but it does not require the reflector dish things. And so now people are doing it again. Obviously, Chisa did it. Other people are doing it. And Lain is now kind of in the center of all this going on. And so now the question, and I think you're absolutely right, that there are multiple factions who are like, okay, this is, who controls this? What's going on? How can we figure out what's going on there? Wesley asked a question, which I think we both know the answer to, and we'll say immediately. Would you recommend marathoning this series or pacing yourself? Pace yourself.
Okay, look. If you marathon this thing, you're gonna marinate your brain in your own stew. I mean, it's just going to. You're just gonna. By the end of it, you yourself are gonna do ascend somewhere. You're just gonna be drooling out of one corner of your mouth. Mm-hmm. It's There's too much to unpack. There really is too much. I mean, as we are talking about it now, and Brent can attest to it because this is my first watch through. He's already seen it a few times, and I'm already like, okay. From episode 1, we're only on episode 6.
Yeah.
Episode 1, I was thinking this, and I'm like, no, that anymore. No, that. And as we're talking tonight, I'm like going, oh, I rethink those things, and then finding that Mobius URL, and then just obsessing over it one night, and just be like, so no, you can't marathon this.
No,
you should not marathon this. If you want to stay sane, no. Yeah.
Now I would say, like, when I watched this originally, I watched a DVD at a time, so I was watching 4 episodes all the way through. I would pause here and there, I'm sure. I would say you don't have to like pace it the way we're pacing it and doing it, a couple episodes a week. You could certainly get through the series in a week or two, just kind of taking your time and getting through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to think about. I think it's one of the rare series where if you marathon it, things are going to blur. And you're not going to be able to appreciate and understand a lot of the references and a lot of the imagery and so forth. You're going to need some time for that stuff to sink in, to remember it, and to kind of process and make those connections, because we're all connected. And that will, it's a more effective way, I would say. Yeah. Because, there's a lot going on here.
There's a ton of stuff going on here. Like, for example, if you and John had not mentioned the red shift, blue shift.
Yeah.
It would never have occurred to me in the first watch through. I would have been like, okay, that's kind of a weird aesthetic choice.
Yeah. I first watched this 20 years ago, and John was the one to point that out to me. It took me decades for someone to make me realize that. Yep, totally. There is a lot here, and again, it is. One of the things I like about the show is it's all intentional. Some of them I'm sure are red herrings. Some of it is, just throwing things in there. Yeah. But it is a very deliberate show with what it's showing you and the symbolism and such. So yeah, it's all there.
It is all there. Because
I am God. We'll return to him later. More to come on him. Do you want to know about Taro?
Will I find out in the next couple of episodes?
I do not remember. I mean, obviously, it's at some point before the end.
Yeah, let me see if I
okay.
Let me see if I'm right. But,
fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. Trust me, the inside of me is screaming, "Yes, I want to know." But, I should probably take it in watch.
And whoever knows, like everyone lies. There's no way of knowing.
It's all a construct.
It's all a construct. I will say it might be. I think it'll be not the next 2 episodes, but the episodes following. We will get to see either the director or the producer of Serial Experience Lain with a sheet over his head.
Great.
In this show. Yep. That's a moment. All right. I think that will do it. So we're going to take a quick break for just a few minutes, and then we'll be back to talk about more modern anime and the latest anime news. We'll be right back.
See you in a bit.
And we're back. How'd you like the transition? That's a new transition this time around. Playing around with OBS and moving things in and out. Lots of fun. So let's take a moment. Let's do a little breather to talk about Hobby Hopper. Every month, members of our community choose a hobby they want to explore that month. Folks in the chat, if you're exploring a hobby, please let us know your progress, even if you're not part of that. As for us, Steve, I know you've been doing some geocaching. How's that been going?
It is tough. I still haven't found one.
Oh gosh!
but it's fun. It's it's one of those things where it makes you go out. And it makes you kind of look for things. And again, like I've said before, you kind of get to exercise your mind as well as your body. A lot of these things have okay, here's the code you need to break or a question you need to answer. And sometimes you actually have to contact the person.
Oh, interesting.
With the answer to get them to tell you if you're right or not.
Wow.
And and if you're right, it's kind of like the guy at the bridge. Answer me these 3 questions. And so
blue. Wait, no.
And so you go through that, and but I think I'm close on the library one. I think I'm close on the center stage one. I think the center stage one is actually, I think I keep coming in at a time when somebody else has found it. So
gotcha.
Because I'm seeing reports on it, and that's the other cool part is people communicate what they find.
Cool.
That kind of stuff. So it's fun. It's something that even in August, where I figured I'll try another hobby, whatever. And but I'm going to continue doing geocaching.
Cool.
It just seems like a lot. It's free fun, folks. It's free fun.
Yeah.
And if you're worried about people in masks and stuff like that, don't. This is one of those things where it kind of takes you out. So you're fine.
It's a good point. You're not out in crowds necessarily, right. So you can just kind of wander around. Good point. I have so I picked as my hobby painting, which I have utterly failed at making any progress on. I prepped a canvas, and that's as far as I went. But I did make some progress on another project, which I think is going to be my project for August, that actually does have kind of an anime connection, even though it's not anime. And that is a novel I wrote some time back, my Sky Pirates novel, which I have been struggling with the ending for that novel for years. And the ending for that novel is actually a ripoff of El Hazard, the anime series, the anime franchise, which is in which I don't think it's a spoiler. There is this one of the sort of moons circling the planet is called the Eye of God, which it turns out is basically an ancient alien death weapon, not alien death weapon, but an ancient death weapon. Davos. So it's basically that. And I know Hazard is a very different story, but the idea in this is that it's actually an ancient religious artifact. It's also a doomsday weapon. And so an adventurer, and you'll understand now when I explain this why I'm having trouble with it. And why I have to rewrite it, because the backstory is that some adventurer guy had finally stumbled across some connection, some way of getting to the Eye of God, and he is immediately sort of captured and tortured for that information, but left, and he dies, but he leaves behind his daughter, who's this little girl, and so immediately she becomes a target. The main characters are a family of ex-Sky Pirates, who are sort of swords for hire, and they kind of swoop in. They're paid to swoop in, grab the girl, realize kind of what's going on, and that there's bigger stuff going on, and that if they let any of the various factions get her, that bad things can happen. So they kind of run on their own, and try to get her to open up to them to find out, what's going on with all this. And so that they can get to the Eye of God, and of course all these different factions are all now chasing after them to try to find it, so forth and so on. And so, fortunately it's not Alderaan. It actually might be a version of the Sky Islands world that we worked on. And so, yeah, totally. And so the problem I was having is something that actually Hayao Miyazaki's talked about. Hayao Miyazaki's early movies were all adventure movies. Castle in the Sky, Nausicaa, even the ones that he worked on earlier than that, Animal Treasure Island and Horace and so forth and so on. They're primarily adventure stories. And he doesn't really make those anymore. And he once wrote about why that was. And he said the problem with writing an adventure story is you either spend the first half of the movie establishing who your villains are, what they want, why they want it, what their resources are, why they don't have it yet, and all those various things, or you make them Nazis.
Well, there's a certain truth to that.
There is.
Because if you say, oh, the villains are Nazis, everyone goes, oh,
Yeah, exactly.
All right, yeah.
Pretty much. And that was my problem, is that in order to establish this ancient religious artifact, and why, that religious order wants to be quiet about it, and why this faction wants it, and why that faction wants it, and all this kind of stuff, and what the backstory was as to why it was developed and built, and all that kind of stuff, I realized I had a lot of work to do to establish all that without info dumping on the audience. Well, this religion was founded 1,000 years ago by this person, and all this stuff that everyone in the world would know. And so without doing an "as you know, Bob" scene, it was just really hard to figure out how to write all that. So I was just doing some journaling this week and realized, oh no, it's there was a war, 15 years ago. The Sky Pirates here were buccaneers in that war, so they kind of served in that war. That's why they were pirates, which also solves the problem of why pirates. And this is just an Armageddon weapon from the war. This is Gigantor, basically. It's 28. It's this ancient it's this artifact from the war that got mothballed and is now somebody's found. And so now no more problems with any of that sort of religious backstory, all that kind of ridiculous stuff. And it also ties into their backstory of, I served in the war, we heard a rumor about this, whatever. And it just makes things vastly simpler. So I'm looking forward to getting back and kind of finishing up and tying up all those loose ends of the story, and finally finishing that novel. Ken Lizards, that's why I went with Eye of God, because it's such a great name for Doomsday Weapon. It's just perfect.
Yeah, it's funny, the world building that was done, the stories that I started putting together. I actually have the story outline of what I want to do, and
nice.
and to the point of the major steps, not the minutiae, but the major steps. And like you, I had the problem of, wow, okay, we're gonna have to put in a lot of this, and it's just like, okay, is there any way I can simplify that? And so, there's that problem, and so I was able to simplify. Now I just got to do it and write it, because I get distracted by other little stories that I have to jot down to remind myself I have to write, like the isekai that went most horribly apocalyptically wrong.
Ooh.
Which is a 2-parter.
Okay.
And it's based on the three of us.
Okay.
And, not actually the three of us, but our personalities. And our D&D characters.
Okay.
And what happens when we get isekai.
Okay.
And because it's a total isekai parody, by the way.
Okay. Cool.
Based on what I just saw this past season.
Okay.
And I'm just like, it's so isekai. And it's just and I've come up with this story, and it's just totally distracting me from the other thing, and I'm just like, I will be at work and doing my thing, and I'll be like going, oh yeah, and that's how that happens. Oh, yeah, that's how no, you need to be thinking about this, not that. So, but eventually it will be a very it will be a not a light novel, not that,
okay,
but just a 2-parter, and cool. Maybe someday it'll show up on this board.
Cool. I look forward to that.
See. I have to figure out what I want to do for August. don't know. Maybe it's time to put Hamlet. Maybe it's time for Bad Robot Theater to do Hamlet.
Oh, I like it.
So we'll see what happens there.
Well, if you've seen the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode of Hamlet, you know, it can be done poorly. You know that much. A stodgy German made-for-TV version of Hamlet is that's redubbed back into English. There's your bar. Way down there. Boy, we'll never forget that. They had a great premise for that episode where they shot up into space, and these the scientists are forcing them to watch bad movies, and so they make they like play a poker game, and if I win, then I get to choose the movie this time. I get to choose the experiment. And they do a thing, and they win, and they said, all right, fine, what movie? I want the finest drama in human history. I want Hamlet. Just Hamlet? Any Hamlet will be fine. Just give me Hamlet. Oh, I have Hamlet. Oh, I can show you Hamlet. Yeah. It's actually an interesting point, and man, you bring up an interesting point about how it's true how back in the day we just watched anime. Like there was so little of it. It didn't matter what genre it was. It didn't matter. Oh, it's a racing show. Okay, I'll give that a try. Like as long as it was anime, we're going to do that. I would love to do an MST 3000, Wesley. The problem is rights.
Yeah.
The problem is figuring out a way of getting that on YouTube without my channel get taken down. I might, if you guys are interested, I might find a way of, I shouldn't say this on public, of recording and putting somewhere my MST of Evangelion Episode 1. That'd be fun. Cause I have a riff of that somewhere, hopefully.
You know what I just figured out?
Mm.
You know what serial experiments lain actually is? I figured it out.
Yeah.
I figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
This is ironclad.
Okay, all right.
You can't disprove it. This is what it is.
Sure.
Serial experiments lain is going to end, whether you realize it or not, as the third impact.
Spoilers. That's an interesting theory. I will not say anything more about that, but that's And this is why we need to watch the new Eva Rebo movies, actually, because I'm really curious how they're going to thread that needle. Are we going to have a third impact? Is it going to be a fifth impact for all we know? Who knows? But yeah, I'd love to do more Mystery Science Theater stuff, or to do Mystery Science Theater stuff. That'd be cool. Thanks for sharing. So, quick reminder, I'll be at Otakon next week. Be doing 3 panels there. Miyazaki's Mythical Animals. So a panel about the animals in Miyazaki's movies. Why you should watch anime from the 1970s.
Yes.
Where I'll be showing a bunch of different cool 1970s anime and talking about what was remarkable about them. And showing some things that I think are going to get some gasps from the audience. Because, oh boy, Rose of Versailles.
Love that series.
Yeah, it's great. And
so melodramatic.
It is all the melodrama. Just the world's melodrama all packed into one show. And then a brief tour of world animation. So,
and you updated that one,
I
right?
did, indeed. So I've got some more stuff from, I think, South Korea and France added into there, plus some other stuff from... I switched out some of the stuff from Russia. And we've also got some stuff from Spain, the UK, and so forth and so on. So that is the... that's the plan. And so I've got all those panels are ready to go. Check out the schedule at Otakon, and you will see those. And basically, it's Saturday and Sunday will be those panels. Check those out. And of course, OnCon 5 is coming up September 11th. Yeah, so more info about that coming up soon, hopefully. Let's talk about how our week's been and the anime we've been watching. Folks in the chat, let us know how your week's been. What you've been watching lately? Any questions you have for the two of us? Steve, been watching any media, anime or otherwise, this week?
Well, of course, serial experiments, and going as we discussed down that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
The, I mean, the fan made site was enjoyable with the made enjoyable with the techno late '90s, early 2000s techno going on in the background. That's why I say turn the volume down. It's loud.
Yep.
It was very, very loud. I have been actually been really busy this week at work because I sling beer, wine, and spirits, and this sounds awful, but Oktoberfest and pumpkin beers are coming their way. So next week I get to order that stuff, and you're like, it's July. I know, thanks, Anna. But so I haven't been able to watch much, but I have been able. But two things. One thing I did watch last night, but one of the things that I was able to do was start book 2 of the Machines Empire series.
Ooh, that looks cool.
Stratagem. Yeah, that's a kind of fun cover there.
Mm-hmm.
And
this
is
a really good,
but really, really good series by Yoon-Ha Lee, Korean. He's a mathematician in real life, and he is transgender.
Okay.
And that subject comes up in here just as a kind of a side issue. This isn't about a LGBTQ or trans gender woke whatever, but the idea of people being whatever is in here.
Okay.
And it's kind of cool how it works in there, but it's just a very interesting look at how calendars influence power and history and control.
Oh, right.
And,
yeah.
The mathematics that are involved with that, because you learn in the second book how much it impacts the actual technology, which powers the technology of the Hextart, which is the ruling governing body. And I don't want to get too much away because it really is good. It's this is practically the only thing he's written is this series and a couple of short stories. But it's good when other science fiction writers are just like, you must read this. You must read this. This is good. So, and it is really a good page turn.
Cool.
The thing I did watch last night, well, actually, two things I tried watching was the Olympics. It's so hard to watch the Olympics because no one's doing it right. So it's hard to find anything. It's hard to find a schedule. It's hard to get to the right channel, all that. And so I was like, okay, I'll do the free Peacock thing.
Okay, yeah.
Watch the Olympics free. So you get Peacocking, and it's not. It's basically just like, like you get a 120-second segment of like, here's the women's basketball volleyball team, and they did a serve, and here's the spike, they win the gold, and it's like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
What's happening in between? And apparently they don't know how to use Zoom. And they had this guy from the 1972 men's basketball team, and he was trying to give an interview, and as he was talking, he had this horrible screen. Like, yours is nice and it makes sense that people can enjoy it, but this guy had, I don't even know what it was. It was all pixelated and whatnot. And as he's talking, he's just like, yeah, 1972, and you hear a dog in the back, rah, 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 rah. And he's just like, oh god, shit, up. And the commentator's pretending he's not hearing the dog. He's just like, oh, really, I can't understand what you're saying. Okay. So that was a mess, so I gave up. And I'm just kind of watching news and highlights on YouTube. But the show that I did watch, first episode last night, was Roger Kirkman's Walking Dead thing. Invincible.
Oh,
Invincible,
okay. Yep.
I should say. Invincible. And the first episode it's really good. J.K. Rowling does the voice of Omni-Man.
Interesting.
One of the main characters.
Huh.
And Stephen Yeun of Walking Dead.
Okay, yeah.
Voices the son of Omni-Man.
Yep.
And you will not recognize his voice.
Interesting.
He does a really good job. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but wait for it. When you think you see the credits, just sit tight.
One of those.
And then because the whole time you're watching this, you're going, "This is Kirkman, Walking Dead. Where is it?
Yep.
Where is it? Where is it?" at the very end, but you do have to watch all of it.
Okay.
To the end. So thus far,
Cool.
Recommended.
I have a weird experience with Invincible because I had a friend who recommended that to me, and I bought that in like issues back when it was first being released, and it's one of the few comics that I ever have done that with. I'm not generally a comics guy, I like comics, but just not really into the scene. And that was one of the things where he's like, "No, you really should read this. You'll enjoy it." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And then they hit some kind of hiatus, and I haven't gotten back to it since. But I remember reading it and thinking this would make an amazing animated series. And I actually watched a video about it recently where they said one of the reasons I think it's so successful is because it is very much American animation. There's there's nothing anime about it at all, but it has all the violence of an Akira. And so it's that contrast. You're like, no, this is not what I expect to see in this kind of a show. That's really got people shocked.
Yeah. Oh, and the last thing, I haven't watched it. It's actually going to happen on Monday.
Ooh.
On my date. Like my weekends now are Sunday and Monday.
I am.
Retail.
Mm-hmm.
On Monday, I'm going to watch an old, horrible sci-fi, not horrible, but grade B sci-fi movie that's a cult classic. I don't think you've seen it, and you should. And if those out in the chat land, if you haven't seen it, you should. It has a very young Emilio Estevez in it, and it has a very compelling Henry Dean Stanton in it, and it is called Repo Man.
I have seen that movie.
Oh, you have?
I have seen Repo Man, yes.
So I get to see it on the big screen
at
the Senator Theater, so I'm going to see that.
Nice.
And, and when I bought the ticket, I wasn't really paying attention to the whole schematics. You buy your tickets now online.
Yeah. And
your actual reserved seat. And then after I bought it, I was like, oh, wow, I'm the only one in the theater.
Yeah.
Hopefully that was true. But
you're gonna see Lain in a theater.
And so I'm gonna get to see that. And for those of you who haven't seen it, you must see it. It's really it's 80s. I'm going to warn you right now. It's 80s, and the soundtrack is put together by one of the members of the Monkees.
Wow.
Yes,
I did not know
awesome, and it is an awesome soundtrack.
Yeah. That is one of those movies where people told me it would be weird, and I went into it, and it was not even the weird I was expecting.
Right.
It's not even like what you think 80s weird would be. It's a very interesting film.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. It's great to see a lot of those. Obviously, Lawrence of Arabia comes back to theaters every so often. People will do screenings. Yeah. But seeing some of these, weirder... I'd love to see Buckaroo Banzai in theaters, some of those movies.
That would be awesome.
Oh, my gosh. So this week I've seen a couple of things. A bit more of Anne of Green Gables. I got to the episode where, if you're familiar, Diana gets drunk. Anne's best friend. Anne decides to have tea with her friend and invite her over, and Marilla's like, yes, you can have her over, and is very nice and so forth. And then there's a wonderful scene where, and I forget how much of this is in the book, but it's just Anne and Diana in the kitchen, and Anne goes to get some raspberry cordial for Diana because Marilla said she could, and she doesn't see what she thinks it is, and gets a bottle, pulls it out, offers it to Diana. And Anne says, in a very Anne way, talks about how, I can barely conjure anything. I imagined a wonderfully tragic and sad story that involved the both of us the other day. And so Diana pours her drink and starts drinking. And Anne says, I imagine that you contracted tuberculosis, and I was by your side. And I nursed you back to health, but then I got tuberculosis myself, and I died, and it was such a wonderfully tragic story. And Diana's listening to this, and yet tears in her eyes. That is a very tragic story, and she pours more, and just keeps on drinking, and she goes through 3 cups of this stuff. And then she's like, I don't feel very well. I think I need to go home. It turns out it's wine. Like, it's actually like cherry wine that she's pouring, not like raspberry cordial. No one had any idea. And so and she goes home, and it's just, what on earth is going on? But it's just, one of the things I love about Anne of Green Gables is how much you empathize with Anne and how cute she is and how much you enjoy spending time with her, but also the fact that she can be a bit much at times. Just tone it down a little, Anne. Just pull it in a little bit. It's okay. Down a little bit. But yes, still a charming, wonderful series. I also watch not anime, not sci-fi at all, but for the first time in my life, I watched It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
What'd you think?
Conflicted, really. I'd heard it described as kind of like the greatest comedy of all time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, and that was just too high of a bar. As a ridiculous road trip film,
yes.
It is all of that. It hits all of the ridiculous road trip film expectations. It is also fun seeing every comedian of the early 20th century somewhere in that film, pretty much, or comic actor, I suppose you should say. It was fun recognizing Buster Keaton in a bit role. Just all these various things, and just a fun ride. Just a fun ride all the way through. And so it was weird watching because I was like, I'm not enjoying this as much as I thought I would, but I'm enjoying this. And it's that kind of battle back and forth. It's like, oh, okay, no, this isn't what I shouldn't have those high expectations of the film. But fun, definitely fun.
Yeah.
You hear that? I watched something else which I should talk about. There's something else which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. I think I can change that. Okay, hold on. I'll also adjust this shot because this is ridiculous. Like this is kind of silly. There's the. Oh, because it's using that explains it. Hold on. I need. Boop, 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 boop. We're using the wrong image. Horrors.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. That's better. I discovered there is. Why am I not? Audio is weird all of a sudden. Don't put this in the actual news video. So I have this thing called Kodi, which is a piece of software that you can install on like a Raspberry Pi or a PC or whatever as a media center. And so I have that on a Raspberry Pi in the other room. And so I've been using that for for just regular media consumption. And I went to the video plugins and found that there are video plugins for like various TV stations that have streams and so forth. And I found a video plugin for the Prelinger Archive.
For the what?
The Prelinger Archive, which is a well-known archive of public domain video, newsreels, what do you call them? Not student films. The films they show in school to tell you, don't run in the hallways.
Instructional
films, thank you. And so I got to watch a bunch of newsreels from the 50s, which is an interesting ride, as well as stuff from the 30s, which is an even more interesting ride, because those Nazi fellows, we'll see where they go. There was a really weird one, which was a vacation video, and it was from 1933, I think. And a couple of folks, and there was a 16mm camera, sort of handheld 16mm camera, and it showed these folks, waving at the camera, looking forward, and then they're driving through Germany, and they're in a church in Germany, and then they go, and there's a big building, and they go into the building, and there's a blimp, and they pan up the blimp, and it says Hindenburg. And it's this, it's this home movie that they filmed of them, their flight on the Hindenburg. Obviously not the last one, but yeah, it's like, wow. Somebody found this footage of this at somewhere. Kind of nuts. And why is that not? Hold on. Everything's not working anymore. Hold on. My camera decided to do weird things. Not my camera, actually my thing. The more technology you have, the more problems can happen. This is how all this works. Okay. Thank you, J-Biz. Right Stuff birthday sale. Last day is today. If you want to buy some anime, head over to Right Stuff and snag that stuff. All right. Let us do the thing. Welcome to the latest anime news for the week ending July 31st, 2021. Manga sales have been on the rise all over the world since the pandemic shutdown started, but the recent increase in France has come for another reason at least, or multiple reasons. The French government launched an initiative back in May to give all 18-year-olds an allowance of 300 euros, that's about $350 to spend on the arts. And I'm sure they meant that they thought they would all go to the Louvre. As of this month, 75% of all purchases made through the program have been books, with roughly 2/3 of those being manga.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. The app that distributes the funds is called Culture Pass, but the French news media is now calling it Manga Pass. The program has unsurprisingly drawn criticism for not encouraging youth to invest in less popular arts. But supporters of the program and, of course, bookstore owners are still happy with the results, A bookseller in Paris commented, "Don't be sorry they read manga. You have to remember that before this, young people would stop reading altogether at that age."
That's true.
Yep. Owners of other bookstores have also expressed their appreciation that the teens are coming to buy manga volumes in person, sometimes dozens of volumes at a time.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever done that.
No, I haven't.
No. The owner of 2 independent bookstores in Paris remarked that, quote, "Getting young people who read but who are more used to Amazon or big box stores to come into us isn't easy," end quote. Fair. This program was one of the president's campaign promises. He said in a speech commemorating the launch of the program that it would be a formidable victory for France if the youth would stop rejecting literature and film. Now, MacLeod himself is a manga fan. He recently met with the creators of Akira and Fairy Tail and was given a special illustration from Eiichiro Oda of One Piece, dedicated to him as well as all the other One Piece fans in the country. I gotta say, if I'm involved in this and I'm kind of doing this, I gotta wonder, like, how much are people upset and how much are they like, okay, like if I did this program and I was like, I expected them to go to the museums, but they bought manga instead. Yeah, I'd rather them go there, but is this worth screaming and yelling about? I don't know.
I'm sure somebody would be upset.
True.
But then again, if you're actually looking at it as in terms of the economy, that as we would over here in the United States, because apparently we value the dollar more than we value art. But then again, we're not a centuries old, centuries old nation as France is, which has plenty of art.
Yeah.
To look at. But still, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, even in my days of going to cons and buying multiple volumes of manga because you can't go cheap, I still never bought dozens of like serialized manga. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just. I mean, honestly, if someone gave me $350, I would. Yeah, I'd do the same thing.
It's true. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'd
Well,
do the same thing.
and back in the day, that was like 3 box sets. It's
Right.
So, that can go quite a ways. I just ran some numbers and I realized that maybe it's that. So 75% of the money went to books, and a third of that went to manga. I'm sorry, 2/3 of that went to manga. I got my numbers all wrong. So that means half. Half of all the money in that program went to manga.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Awesome.
I will say the only time I think I know I've done something like that in the past was if there was like a 20-volume series and I got in like volumes 1 through 5, and I went somewhere and they had volumes 6 through 20. That's when I would do that, right?
Now that you mention it, I think that would be something like if I found Buddha.
Yes,
In
yeah.
its entirety, I'd be like, here
Yep.
it is. Please take my money.
Yep.
Take it all.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the only dozens of. I mean, I guess, granted, if you're into One Piece, there's a lot of One Piece. That would do it. Yeah, and it's a good point, Jay. And head over to Right Stuff to buy more manga. Why not? Get in on that sale. The Kadokawa president Takeshi Natsuno came under heavy criticism this week for remarks he made concerning manga content and how it's received overseas. His comments were made during an Abema Prime program regarding the appropriateness of gravure in boys' magazines, and were criticized for expressing a pro-censorship view, especially in light of his position as a significant publisher like Kadokawa. He noted that there is a great deal of manga that is, quote, even more stimulating than gravure, end quote, saying, quote, with that in mind, a lot of Japanese manga won't pass review at Google or Apple, so while keeping that in mind, I do somewhat have the feeling that we have to reestablish the standards of what is okay to release and what isn't for the internet era. In the publishing industry that I'm in, everyone is in the pro-freedom of speech camp, but I do get this strong feeling that we have to redraw the line somehow, end quote. Many creators and writers expressed their strong disagreements with his statements. Ken Nakamatsu, not surprisingly, creator of Love Hina and Negima, commented that while he didn't think Natsuno's statements were made with the intention of convincing other publishers to censor their manga, his level of influence gives him the power to impose censorship at Kadokawa should he choose. Akamatsu also pointed out that Kadokawa, unlike other major publishers, is listed on the first section of the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Akamatsu said, quote, it appeals to shareholders to conform to the standards of foreign capital, end quote. Novelist Mikito Chinen tweeted, if censorship were to happen, then Japan's manga and anime would lose all their predominance. Manga and anime are received well overseas because they were created with freedom and without consideration for what will do well there. It is quite dangerous for this kind of opinion to emerge from Kadokawa. Natsuno issued a formal apology on Wednesday, recognizing that while he participated as an individual, it was still inappropriate for him to make such remarks as the president of the company. He emphasized that his individual comments have no bearing on the direction of the company and will take a 20% pay cut as repentance for the next 3 months.
Okay. Whether or not you agree with him, wouldn't it be nice if we could do that to our own CEOs?
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
Take a 20% pay cut for saying something stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Yeah.
Go on ahead,
Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of people know my stance on censorship, which is I'm not big on it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear things like that come out of it's one thing for me to say it,
right?
Like if I were to be pro that way,
mm-hmm.
and say I think we should do it, repeat what he said,
mm-hmm.
and not being the president of the publishing company, that would be one thing,
mm-hmm.
right? But when you are the president of a publishing company and you start talking about censorship, the problem that I think people will have with that is that, well, you're part of the industry, so you want some kind of control
mm-hmm.
of the industry, and that control is going to come from you because that's really what you want.
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I think a lot of people get a big problem.
This is one of the things that I'm sure he understood this, but a lot of people
Yeah.
I think don't understand is that as the president of the company, you are always president of the company. In every situation, you are never off the record. That just doesn't exist.
That's it. Yeah.
You don't get that option. And even on the program, I'm sure there's a disclaimer or somewhere. I think it does say. And again, I can appreciate being a publisher saying and having the opinion of, I think some of these things are too extreme and we're going to have to redraw the lines at some point. I think that's not an unreasonable opinion to have, but when you state it, in that position, then people take the wrong opinion, and he should have realized that. And so it's kind of unfortunate. Good on him for taking the pay cut, though.
Yeah.
I think that tells that he's serious about the significance of the statement, and that he recognized that it's not just him. That it was a misstep. It was not just oops, I said the wrong thing.
Right.
I am curious about this statement that. Okay, let me ask this. So the term here, and I'm sure when they're talking about gravure, they're not speaking about photo etching. The common thing, but they're speaking of somewhat more mature material. I'm assuming in their anime and in their manga. Do we really think that's what makes anime and manga popular overseas?
When I bring up the subject of manga to someone who doesn't really know what that is, the first thing I have to explain is what is manga. But then once you explain it and you kind of for want of a better term Americanize the explanation, meaning hey, this is kind of like Japanese comic books. Okay, the reaction you get is not one of I'm gonna get that because I get to see naked people. It's more along the lines of I like the Iron Man movies, so I want to see this. I want to see the adventure.
It's different.
It's a different concept. I don't think anybody internationally is going there. If you want porn, there's easier ways and cheaper ways to do it. It's just a keystroke away, literally.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is, and I think you've alluded to this in the past in our discussions about it, which is when it is being done, where is the line where it becomes...
And I just looked it up, and I realized this is important for the discussion, which I should point out. Gravure idols are specifically underage idols. That appear in swimsuits and sometimes less than swimsuits in various outfits. And it's a big deal in Japan because some of those things very much cross the line into very suggestive material. And so I think what you're referring to here is obviously you have characters in manga who are clearly underage, dressed in very provocative outfits, or panty shots of underage characters. So I think it's that specific thing he's talking about. So
because that's a different frame of the conversation.
Yeah.
But again, still, when you say to the average American, would you buy a manga? One Piece. Okay, that sounds like
right.
Dragon Ball Z. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, here's a gravure. Oh, really?
And that's where I think it's kind of interesting. Where if he's basically if the topic of the conversation is specifically gravure, and he's saying, that is a problem internationally because that is a problem internationally, and that that may affect the issue, affect the industry in the future. That is a much more understandable sort of tack he's taking in that conversation, as opposed to, we got boobies, we can't have that anymore.
Right.
And by the way, to be clear, it is illegal according to the U.S. code to own an illustration of an underage character involved in adult materials. That's in any way, shape, or form. So that is just a legal difference that they have to deal with. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know. I think all things considered, like you said, I think, at least he took the pay cut. At least he apologized and said, and again, I appreciate that he apologized not in the sense of, I should never have been on a TV show, of saying, I said something in a role that I should not have said.
Right.
So, cool. Speaking of people talking, last weekend's Comic-Con at Home event featured an interview with Evangelion creator Hideaki Anno discussing and thank you to Becca, who puts together our news, for putting scare quotes around final Evangelion film. He also discussed his future plans. Anno said that he is relieved the movie and the series is finished after taking twice as long as he planned. I guess the movie is finished, barring 3.0.1.2, and praised the cast and staff for always working hard to maintain a high quality on every aspect of the work. He was asked about why he thought the series was so popular globally and said that while it's difficult to say for each person, people all over the world have clearly come to empathize with something in this series, perhaps the emotions it expresses, or the structure that could be taken as their own stories. When asked about the future for him, he said, "It took 16 years to finally finish this series. I'm really relieved. When I realized I had turned 60, now that I've turned 61 this year, from now on I plan on making some new live-action films instead of Eva. For animation, it'd be great if I have a chance to do it again after I take some live-action shots. Nothing has been decided yet, though." He also explained what he's looking forward to about moving into live action, saying, "Making a live action video is totally different from animation. I can do a lot of things that I can't do with animation. That's why I'm really looking forward to it. I want to do things that are only possible in live action." Which is interesting because how often animators talk about the freedom of animation. Finally, Anno commented that he usually makes his works, including Evangelion, for the Japanese audience with Japanese themes in mind, and is grateful and honored that his works have been seen and loved by people all over the world.
So basically, he's making live action versions of that joke.
Yes, exactly, pretty much. And by the way, to those unclear, he's made several live action films already. It's not his first work, but yeah. No, I think. So first off, will there be a revision to the final rebuild movie? Will he change anything? Yeah, I agree. Do you think Anno will come back to Evangelion in animation in a serious way in the future? Like, is he going to make another series, another set of movies, something like that? Or do you think he's, not necessarily, maybe he'll make this short, something like that, but do you think he's really seriously going to come back to it from this point on?
No, I think he'll be the producer in the sky.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, if it's pitched to him, he'll be like, yeah, sure, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in.
Yeah, I completely agree. Do you think, how long until we get another Evangelion remake, but directed by somebody other than Anno?
I'm going to say not that long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say 2 years.
Wow, okay. Wow, all right. Interesting. Mm-hmm.
No.
Fair. Yeah, it's gonna happen. We're gonna get another
stick figures.
I don't know. Well, we talked before. I think that universe certainly has space for more stories.
Yeah.
So at the very least, I can see somebody doing a side story in the Evangelion universe.
Yeah.
But what would Evangelion by Shinbo look like, or by Shinkai look like, or by Hosoda look like? The mind reels. I wonder. And I say that because Evangelion pieces together so many bits of super robot lore, and not lore, but the super robot sort of references, and it's a very kind of otaku thing. And so I just don't know how somebody else can get all of those sort of pieces put together. But people said that about Gundam, that Gundam couldn't possibly be made by other people. So I don't know.
I think it'll be more along the lines of character driven as opposed to concept driven. I think they'll leave the concept alone. I think what will happen is that you'll get, okay, and this is what Masato was doing.
Yeah.
This is what,
I agree.
This is how actually for Shinji, which is easy. This is how Shinji became emo. He was born that way.
Get the damn robot, Shinji. Also this week, news stories you want to just touch on. NFTs. Increasingly common topic in the world of digital arts. Anime and manga industry is no exception. This week, a new NFT project was announced from the creator of Phoenix Wright, the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney manga, Kazuo Miyakawa, and writer and podcaster Tony Vega. And this is the thing, it is a project called Crypto Cross Manga. That is the project title, but they're going to call it B&B Bad Sisters, like the actual story. And it's set in an alternate reality, Crypto Tokyo, where cryptocurrency is a part of daily life and gangs of crypto-obsessed teenagers roam around. The main characters are high schooler sisters who restore peace to Crypto Tokyo. The world will be developed through both digital and physical art releases, and the creators are also looking into other ways of telling the story along with the art. The art pieces will launch in multiple batches over a 2-month period, with the first set of 27 pieces debuting on August 6th. So I'm not sure if that means whether the art itself will be released as NFTs, or if NFTs are just the plot of the thing. I don't know.
So here's the thing. So the makers of the 21st Amendment beer, I think it's they had, or was it? No, it's 21st Amendment. And for those of you who don't know what 21st Amendment is, that is the repeal of the 18th dealing with alcohol. They had a series of beers they put out, and on the cans were comic panels.
Huh.
So with each year, with their seasonal release, would be a new 3-panel comic.
Interesting.
And it was about how the evil cats, I think, cats were trying to bring back prohibition, and the dogs were trying to prevent it. And I think the brewery was 20%.
Okay.
Brewery. But the reason why I bring that up is that if you're doing an NFT thing and you're telling your story about that thing, then they're going to tell you have to buy the NFT.
Yeah.
So, if you want this, and then, or they might cross media it, or they have to, whatever it is that they're going to do. And it may be a very limited edition of what you get. Yes. They'll probably be like going, okay, well, this thing might normally have cost you $14.95 in the bookstore, but we're going to charge you 8 Bitcoins, which would be about $120,000. So here you go.
Yep.
Here's your manga.
Yeah.
Digital manga.
Yeah, I'm curious. I completely agree. I think they'll make NFTs of like the original digital art, but then they'll also distribute it some other way. Sure. Right? Yeah. But it's an interesting idea, definitely. Anime studio Geek Toys announced this week it's producing a TV anime adaptation of the Taiwanese role-playing game franchise Fantasia Sango to premiere this October. It combines the Romance of the Three Kingdoms Chinese novel with supernatural fantasy elements. No one's done that before. I kid. A new original short TV anime was also revealed this week. Deji Meets Girl will begin in October with 90-second weekly episodes. It's a modern fantasy story taking place in summer in Okinawa, where strange things start happening at the main character's parents' hotel after the arrival of a mysterious boy from Tokyo. Sounds like a nice summer relaxing show.
And we've never done this before.
Right. Yeah. Mysterious transfer student?
No.
An anime adaptation is also in the works for the nature learning picture books Insect Land, which explore the lives of insects, while also emphasizing themes of ecology and diversity. I am guessing it's going to be aimed at a slightly younger audience than our standard audience, but it could be fun. Variety reported this week that a new live-action Pokemon series is in development at Netflix. Early sources list the executive producer and co-showrunner of Netflix's Lucifer series, Joe Henderson, as writer and exec producer for this series. A lot of special effects in Lucifer. Special effects heavy show, so it kind of makes sense for a show like this. I do have to pause here. I have a pitch for this. Pokemon live action series. How do you do a Pokemon live action series? Because one of the problems here is it's going to be live action characters with CGI Pokemon, right? And it's always kids. So how do you do a kid show with kid protagonists, especially if it's not a one-off? Now, granted, Netflix typically does, they'll do 1 or 2 seasons and then cancel it. But let's pretend that Nintendo's like, no, or the Pokemon company's like, no, this is going to be a thing. We're going to do a live-action, long-term Pokemon series. Here's my pitch. I want to see what you guys think about this. They come out with a 26-episode live-action series, half hours, maybe 13-episode hours, about a young boy who goes out in the world and collects Pokemon and has adventures. And at the end of that story, he becomes a gym leader, right? One of the gym leaders in one of the gyms in his region or whatever. So it is like literally his story. It's not not story, whatever, forever. But he goes, and at the end, he wants to become a gym leader. He becomes a gym leader. That comes out, fine. And then they announce season 2. It's about a girl who wants to go out and collect Pokemon and wants to challenge this gym leader. And so her story in season 2 is her becoming a Pokemon trainer, going out, collecting Pokemon, doing all these things, and then challenging the protagonist of season 1, at which point she becomes a gym leader. And then season 3 is another kid. And so you can just keep on doing this over and over. The kids can still grow up. They can still come back as gym leaders later on in later shows. And you can keep that continuity. But then you have your kid every year, new thing, new Pokemon, and just keep on churning them out for time immemorial. That's my pitch.
Pokemon Menudo.
Yeah.
Menudo.
There we go. Yes.
Menudo.
Pokemon Menudo. Yeah. Obviously, live action Pokemon is a thing. Like that could go really poorly. Who knows?
I'm just having visions of Death Note. Like I'm just this thing just being done so wrong.
Yep.
So wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, that's really burned me on that one.
Yeah,
it's been years and I'm still talking about it.
Yeah, and
I'm still annoyed with it.
And the thing is, there was the Detective Pikachu movie, right, which was successful, but no one was like, "Oh, I can't wait to see a TV series out of this." So who knows? It was also announced this week that the new game manga will end in the August 27th issue of Manga Time Kirara, the series' final compiled volume shipping a month later. It's about a small video game development company, which inspired a TV anime back in 2016. And then finally, the staff of Anime Expo announced this week that the 2022 event will once again be held in person at the LA Convention Center. This year was the 30th anniversary for Anime Expo.
Wow.
Yep. So here's hoping AX will be back next year like normal.
That'd be nice.
It would absolutely be nice. That's all the news for this week. Thanks for watching. See you all next week. Cool. That was that. And for some reason, see, now that we have this, I can actually show all of it. There we go. So we can see our entire bodies. It's nice. Yeah, I'm also worried about Netflix just being Netflix and just being like, here's 10 episodes, goodbye.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, I guess. Anyway. I'm going to talk about something I like.
What do you like?
I like a lot of things. I like anime. And this is an anime that I am fairly convinced no one here has seen. But we'll find out. Welcome to Brent's Anime Recommendation Corner. Wait. Welcome to Brent's Anime Recommendation Corner, where I talk about anime that I love. And I just recommend anime that I think is really, really awesome. And I'm here to talk about Noiseman Sound Insect. And I hear all of you going, what? Noiseman Sound Insect is a 15-minute anime film which is set in a world where a crazy scientist created a creature that eats sound. And after doing so, has created this dystopia of teenagers on like hover bikes that fly, are really flying jars. They're really more flying jars that fly around, going after like spirits of people that have been, or they're kind of like fish that float in the air. That they're trying to capture up because they are trying to fight back against the new god sort of their world. But then of course things happen because the main character, this boy, discovers things are not all as they appear, and then is promptly turned into a floaty flying fish. And so it's actually up to the girl in the story to rescue her friend and save the world from the strange creature that eats sound. In case you're wondering if this sounds trippy, it's trippy. This is a really weird short film, and it is all dependent on your appreciation of music and audio. Obviously, this rises and falls on the music going all the way through it. And fortunately, the music is by Yoko Kanno. So, yeah. This is a trip all the way through. It is 15 minutes, but by the end of it, you will feel like you have watched a 90-minute movie. What they did is they basically took a 90-minute movie and just chopped out all the boring bits. And so you just get all the good stuff all there in 15 minutes. It's a remarkable, remarkable thing. Lots of crazy animation. If you have seen a Robot Carnival, the sequence with Franken's gears, the animator of that was the director of this, if I recall correctly. And it's just this weird, wacky visual trip through this strange world, very, very sci-fi imaginative stuff, very high animation budget, but as you can see, this very distinctive art style, not kind of your traditional anime character designs. Lots of kind of interesting saturation effects on the colors, kind of desaturated in some ways. A lot of like sort of pastel colors. Really, 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 really cool. Just really amazing little short film. If you can track it down, highly recommended. 15 minutes, you're done. Noiseman Sound Insect.
Wow.
Yeah, that is that thing. It's definitely a thing. I'll talk about the history real quick. Why not? History exists. History exists. Do I have these in? Yes, I do. So let's talk about some history real quick. Welcome to This Week in Anime History, where we talk about things that happened this week in anime history, starting, as you can see, with July 29th, 1989, the premiere of Kiki's Delivery Service in Japan. Hayao Miyazaki movie, and notable for the fact that it was Ghibli's first huge financial success. Ghibli also obviously had been around, was known as a studio, was making movies that people were aware of, but wasn't really a big success, partly because Hayao Miyazaki was a big old socialist, and didn't really believe in the whole marketing, well, not in the whole marketing, but in the whole merchandising thing. And then finally got convinced otherwise, and started making money that way. And then Kiki's Delivery Service was kind of the movie that everyone turned out for, right? Where everyone just showed up for this movie. The theaters were packed, and Kiki's Delivery Service was really, really, really a big deal, and kind of put Ghibli on the map as a studio that would survive, definitely, and would stick around for a while. Also, moving forward a few years and halfway across the world, July 29th was also the first Otakon, but for in 1994, the first Otakon that was in Pennsylvania back in the day with a total of 350 attendees.
I'm just remembering the year when they hit 33,000
Yeah.
at the BCC, and that was just a mess.
Yeah.
A glorious mess.
It's grown.
Just a little.
Just a little bit, yeah. And that's this week in anime history. Yeah, Kiki's is fairly dark. I will agree. I mean, it has its dark moments. It's not like, Grave of the Fireflies dark, but yeah, I think people go into Kiki's and expect it to be just this fun, light story, but no,
It's Miyazaki, so
Right. Yeah. Miyazaki has his things, his issues.
He lets kids play with chainsaws. So.
Yeah, yeah, literally. Forgot about that. You're right. Yeah.
They'll be fun.
Fine.
Socialized meds.
Exactly. How many fingers do you really need? Well, I have a question.
Oh yeah.
What did we learn on the show tonight,
Brent? Even more beautiful than usual.
Oh wow.
Yeah, this is really impressive. Boy, I learned. I certainly did not learn that Lain is trippy. But I did learn, or was reintroduced to the fact that Lain gets very trippy at times. That there's that aspect of Lain is weird, but like Lain takes a turn towards the crazy, like right at that episode 5, and I had forgotten just how strong that turn was. Like I was pushed up to the side of the vehicle, pressing up against the glass on that turn. Whew. I also learned that manga is popular in France.
Yes.
At least among 18-year-olds. Gosh, half of all of that. $350 to every 18-year-old in France. That's got to be a lot of money.
How many 18-year-olds are in France?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think that's what. I also learned that the NFT train isn't over yet. Like it's still chugging along. Definitely. How about you?
I question my ability to learn sometimes. Because, Lain has made me question everything.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when I wake up and I go, am I real? Touch my shoulder and be like, yeah, solid. All right, there we go. I have learned, yes, that if given the power and the financial ability to educate oneself, if you're a certain demographic, you're going to buy manga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've learned that most of those people will not buy nudie manga. They're not going to buy, anything racy. They're going to buy the One Piece.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to buy the stuff that everybody really wants to read. You know what they probably bought? I'd be really curious to see what.
Yeah, you're right. Me too.
What was bought? Because I was just kind of just thinking, how many Gold 13s were bought? How many One Piece?
Yeah.
What is it? Something that's new? Is it something popular? Are they popular? Is there any trend or maybe a trend in topic? Is it Isekai? Is it? Wouldn't it be ironic if it was Rose of Versailles?
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. I'm looking up Statista, which is, who knows. They claim that between 2010 and 2020, there were 18,000 manga titles published in France.
Wow.
That's a lot of manga.
Yeah.
And I assume that means individual series. Like
Right.
Yeah. 7,484 were shonen. 5,672 were seinen, and 4,000 were shoujo.
Huh.
So I think that Go 13 direction may be accurate.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Huh. Interesting. And the last thing I learned, is that thank God I was not drinking. I was watching Serial Experiments Lane 5 and 6 and came across the URL on the pressure gauge. Because I could only just imagine what I would have been like at 5 a.m. in the morning, because I would have gone down that rabbit hole and just been like, oh my God, the messages for you and John in Discord would have been like so many. By the end of it, it would have just been all consonants. Just like, oh, where's Steve staying now? Oh. And I would have lost my damn mind. I would have just, it was bad enough. It was bad enough that I stayed up late enough. Like, I was a wreck. But I'm just thankful because, oh God, what if I did drink malt liquor? Oh my God, I would have been so. Oh my God, there would have been holes in my walls. Yeah, so that's what I learned. That's what I learned, kids.
Yeah.
Do not drink. Do not do drugs while you're watching, reading, whatever. Serial Experience Lane.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also learned that the video game is still every bit as. I didn't see your video the other night, but
yeah. You reminded me. I completely forgot to stream last night the Lain game. I meant to mention this. I just completely lost my mind. I apologize. I've been streaming the Lain game every Friday night, and I was just doing other things and lost track of time.
Which honestly, folks, that may have been good for your sanity.
True. I was playing Genshin Impact. Which is very good for my sanity.
Especially in the world.
Yes. But by the way, no, I was not playing Genshin Impact. That was joking. Do not make a drinking game out of Lain. That is a bad idea. I'm just telling folks. Every time you're confused, take a drink. No.
Well,
Oh man, I'm really looking forward to seeing where we go with this. Next week is Otakon, so I'm gonna see what happens with our schedule for Saturday night. If possible, I will stream. It depends on just kind of how the schedule works out in terms of kind of what's going on at Otakon. I would like to stream, but potentially I will not be able to. So we're not going to schedule like anything to talk about next week. But if I'm there, we will go live and we'll talk about stuff. I'm sure there'll be stuff to talk about. Stuff. And then we will be back to Lain, I believe, the week after. Let me just check the schedule real quick. Make sure I'm not lying at any of y'all's. That's right. For the rest of August, after next week, we will be finishing up Lain. Is the plan?
All Lain all the time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Why not? And we will hopefully get through episode 13 by the end of August. And then maybe, possibly, we're talking about, see what you all think about this. We're talking about analyzing the Evangelion Rebuild movies in September. All 4 of them. One right after the other. If you thought we were having trouble now.
All right. Well, it's a good thing I have a doctor's appointment on Monday because
there we go.
Before I watch Repo Man, because they'll be like, okay, any meds you might want. I'm just going to be doing it for the next month. Is there any medication I might want to take?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all so much. This has been a great night as always. We'll see you all.
Thank you.
Next week, possibly. Week after that, definitely. Take care, all. Bye.
And this is when we dance.